Marco.
Sean.
We are spending a lot of time in the car together, virtually.
In the virtual car together this time.
And it's a long drive across the states.
Well,
LA to
for
New
people
York.
that follow me on my podcast, I may have mentioned a few times that I spent some time in Atlanta and I did drive there, and then I drove back to LA. So, hey, it's another drive cross country. What's the big deal?
There we go.
We can go to New York City.
Of course, I love New York City. And,
you could be already there. I never know where you are.
You never know where I'm going to be. I might be there now. People can do a little OSINT to figure out where I am. But where I will be and where you should be, everybody listening, is CyberTech New York City, September 5th. And I guess there's some stuff on the 4th as well, which we'll get into. And a great event happening at the Metropolitan Pavilion in Chelsea. A cool spot, part of the city there. And I'm thrilled to have Steve Corrick on. Steve, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Doing great. And you have the pleasure of organizing this event in New York City. It's part of a global series of events that your team does. And I think as a director, you're responsible for this in North America. So we're going to talk about the event, who's going to be there, what's going on, a little bit about what people can expect. But before we do that, maybe a little bit more about your role and the broader CyberTech group and everything that the team does globally.
Yeah, absolutely. And great to be here, and thank you. So CyberTech New York is part of a global suite of events that started about 10 years ago in Tel Aviv, which has a strong base of all things cyber. The event there now, just to give some sort of background, the event there is now up to about 20,000 people, and is a primary event for the cybertech community globally. The team then, a few years later, launched a marquee event in Italy, in Rome, for the European market. And that now is one of the preeminent cybertech events for the European market. And at different times in different places around the world, we've had cybertech as far afield as Rwanda, in Africa, in Panama, in Central America, and other locations, even Indiana, here in the US, and different locations. Part of the reason for that is that, and I'll come on to the US part of it in a second, but part of the reason for that is, and something perhaps pursuant to this conversation for New York, is that there's a lot of localities, be they cities or states, who very much want an event like this in their neighborhood, as it really highlights and helps augment the cyber ecosystem, which big part of the tech ecosystem, of course, but that brings with it spotlight, it brings with it investment, shines a light on the ecosystem. The ecosystem being defined as everything from talent to universities to the whole infrastructure that supports something like cybertech. And over the last few years, quite a while, of course, New York has become such a hub for all things tech, and particularly cyber. There's a lot of things going on here, from established companies, from the Googles and the Amazons and all the other companies that touch into cyber and AI, of course, as that's growing, through to the many startups, domestic startups, overseas startups, some of which still land in my old neighborhood of Palo Alto and other places, but increasingly many of them land here in New York. And then start that journey of growing, perhaps being acquired at some point, or going public, whatever that looks like. So CyberTech New York specifically, this is the third time we've done the event in New York. We started it a few years ago in the middle of COVID, when people were telling us we were kind of crazy to do a live event in 2021. But we did it over at the Glass House over there by the Intrepid, for those of you that know New York. And then we did another edition at the Jacob Javits Center, and decided this year to go with the Metropolitan. We like the cool vibe there. It's a good location in Chelsea. It's close to a lot of that sort of startup action down towards Hudson Yards and other places. So yeah, we're really excited to be back in New York. Happy to be here to shine a light on. I am a New Yorker, despite my dulcet tones. Very much happy to shine a light on everything that New York has, and very much happy to have the support of the city, the Economic Development Corporation, because we're very much about promoting New York as a center of cyber excellence.
Well, that sounds interesting. I definitely want to know more about the Rome one, because being Italian, I may be interested in getting an excuse just to go back even one more. But this is not what we're going to do today. Hopefully, we will get to talk to you guys about other events in other parts of the world. So tell me a little bit more about the focus of this event. I mean, there is many cybersecurity event conference in the world. Some are a little bit more technical, more training, hands-on, and other are maybe, again, for VC and displaying more of a business side of things. So does this event qualify for either one or the other, or what makes it different? That's the point.
Yeah, that's a great question, Marco, because we're calling this a special edition because we put this together quite quickly because we saw a need in the market to do something. But beyond that, CyberTech is a little different to the many, and there's many great cybersecurity events and cyber events that happen. Even in New York, there's probably one every week, if not every day. This is a little different to the extent that it doesn't speak just to the sort of traditional vendor seller community, if you will. It's not just about, it is partly about this, I just want to make the point, but it's not just about established cyber companies selling their solutions to cybersecurity professionals. We very much welcome that, and that's part of what we do. But we tend to focus much more on the broader ecosystem, and that I would define as everything from, if I think about, for example, if I can start with our cyber talent initiative. So the cyber talent initiative that we've got in place, that will speak to everything from people who are already in cyber, perhaps looking to upskill their needs, all the way through to students. We've got a cyber challenge that's taking place with local boroughs and universities and schools involved. So we start with a very, if you will, I wouldn't call it the bottom of the funnel, but we start with that level of the funnel of the people coming into the cyber market. We then have a focus on all things VC and investor related and private offices and so forth. And that we've got a program there that we ran around the world called Invest in the Best. And that's more for established startups looking to augment their funding and form other partnerships. And then we do speak to, as I would say, that traditional established cyber security or cyber tech vendor who's looking to meet with the chief information security officers and other security professionals. But then we also do bring in government and agencies and other stakeholders, if you will, in the ecosystem. We talk to cities about what makes a great ecosystem. So we'll have a panel on, for example, why is New York so successful and what are other cities doing to be successful. So we speak to cyber very holistically because we think cyber is everything in this day and age. And so we speak to it on a very broad, but then we drop down into these very specific forums. So if you're coming just for talent, we have a program for you just for talent. If you're coming more for the main stage content, which this year I'm pleased to say is talking to topical stuff such as fake news and the role of cyber in elections. I'm reliably informed we're going to have an election here in a couple of months. So all that kind of stuff that's topical and focused, sort of big picture stuff, if you will, that involves speakers from cyber, the head of cyber from coming from different parts of the world, and so on. So, you know, we take a broad stroke. We try and cram a lot in, as you'll see on the agenda, across a couple of stages. But we want to try and get everybody's, you know, we think the currency that we're being paid in many ways in events is with people's time. Yes, we're for profit, don't get me wrong, but we value people's time and we want to get people as much return on their investment of time as possible. So hopefully that gives you a flavor for it.
Yeah, it certainly does. And I was looking at the program. I think you touched on all of them. There's Invest in the Best.
Yeah.
There's Identity Think Tank, CyberTech Talent, and Special Simulation. I don't know any of those. You touched on all those, I think.
I didn't touch on the special simulation, but we'll be doing that. We also have something called EIS, which is a group that exists already. We're partnering with them around electric infrastructure. We've taken we tend to take a very partner agnostic view of the way so I've worked in many events businesses, and there's no ideal recipe, but some events are very proprietary. They only work internally with what they produce content-wise and so forth. We take a view here that we can partner with a lot of people, and sometimes it's a straight partnership. Sometimes there's a little element of, what do we call it, co-opetition or frenemies, which is all fine. So, for example, on our talent initiative, we partnered with a group called Tech Day, who does their own event every year for startups in the Janet Center. For the electric infrastructure initiatives, we partnered with EIS. They're a group that already exists. So there's a range of things that we've brought to the table here that we think that are good for the market, good to be a partnership that we're wrapping up. But I think, yeah, you've got most of them. We also have a threat intelligence workshop. We have a number of things going on. And these might, in the end be 20, 30, 40, 50 people in the room, but that's great as long as they're getting the information they want at that time, along with all that sort of main stage content.
Yeah, and what I like, I'm going through the brochure here, and it's a global set of speakers. I see Ireland, Netherlands, Israel,
Bosnia.
Yeah, loads of different places, and then a lot of large name brands. I see Walmart and AWS, and who else did I see? I don't know. Not necessarily Philips. I think it was another one, but then also some smaller orgs that are part of the conversation. Is that I think what I've heard in the last few months, as I was talking to folks, is there's a lot of, and I've seen some posts on LinkedIn as well, that there's a lot of best practices from large organizations, and those work for large organizations, and to distill those down into smaller pieces that work for smaller orgs is just as critical. And so I love to see the different range of folks you have participating in these. And are they roundtables? Are they panels? Are they birds of a feather? Talk about the format a bit.
It's a mixture of all of those. It's a good question. The main stage obviously necessarily is the main stage, and it's panel based. But we have a lot of forums. We have the identity forum, which is the night before the main event. That's more of a roundtable format. We have an area called Quantum, which is much more about roundtables. The whole Invest in the Best and so forth is much more of a roundtable format. But you're absolutely right to point to the fact that there's larger companies, smaller companies, and even some of the larger companies, they're coming in with perhaps sometimes a different angle. So, for example, we've got a great a woman coming in from Snapchat, and she's going to talk about her journey. Though she's happens to be a woman from a minority, but she's going to talk to our talent attendees about that journey and what it was like to get there, and to be inspired by things, to get involved in cyber. We're trying to encourage those that want to, particularly here in the New York area, to get involved with cyber as a potential career. That's very much part of our focus. But I take your point very, very well, that we see, there's big company thinking and big company stuff, and then there's obviously the startups. But in between that as well, it's interesting because I did a panel last week on entrepreneurship, and it shouldn't be lost on us that a lot of very innovative things are happening internally within the companies. And I'm sure you guys have all the examples from Gmail and Post-it note stuff that was invented by individuals within large corporations. So that's certainly a feature of the cyber area, right? That you've got a lot of people off doing their thing within the auspices of a big organization, but really driving innovation. So we see that as a big inspiration as well.
Yeah, Marco invented duct tape, so I'm not able to ask that last question. I always have one more question at the end.
I invented it.
So out of necessity,
a duck
Marco.
Around the tape, a tape around the duck, or a duck around the tape. I don't know. One of the other.
And I'm the duck. That's what I'm doing. Right.
Well, I do have a question, because you mentioned you've been doing this for a while, and I know by doing coverage at the larger event, smaller event, that things have changed, especially in cybersecurity, from what it used to be the conversation 10, 15 years ago to what we do today. We put together government. It's a meeting point, if it's done right, in my opinion, an event where you connect different angles of society, and you bring it together. I would love your opinion to how have you seen this change throughout the year, and what have you learned maybe and applied to making this event?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that to your point, that perhaps the whole notion of cyber and cybersecurity, particularly, even a few years ago, was something sort of in the background for the technical crowd, for the the nerds, if you will, the people that work in IT that would warn you about phishing and other things and so forth. It was which is all important, but it was seen very much as sort of a over there, sort of not part of mainstream life. And I think that what the last few years have shown, mainly a lot of it sadly from the security angle, perhaps some of it, is that cyber is part of our everyday life. Certainly, cybersecurity is. I mean, the number of instances now of security breaches, whether they be in hospitals or schools or obviously banks. But I think what resonates much more with people is unfortunately, when it happens in a mainstream area like a hospital or a school or so forth, and ransoms and so forth. I think that's brought it much more into the public domain. And I think also there's an acceptance on the military level, if you will, that cyber warfare, cyber activity, cyber security is very much part of what governments are working on every day right now. I mean, the major attacks and problems that we see, and the collaboration, on the positive spin on this, the collaboration that we see now between countries is immense, and that's part of what we're fostering here. As you say, there are countries, from all over the world. And the last time when we did CyberTech here in New York last time, it was the first time that the heads of cyber, not just from Israel, but from the UAE, from Morocco and other parts of the world, had sat on the same stage together and talked about their common challenges and their common hopes and so on. So I think, to answer your question, Marco, I think that now cyber, not just because of security, but because security is front and center, is much more of it's part of the mainstream of our life. It's part of our technology. It's, it's there, right, along with cell phones and laptops and connectivity and Wi-Fi, and it's just part of the conversation, I think, nowadays.
Yeah.
So that's
I gotta be honest, sorry, because I want to add this. You always try to go global, bring everybody from all the part of the world, which is great, but sometimes I think that it could be more effective when you focus on the community, on the smaller community. So the fact that you're focusing on the New York City and that infrastructure and those companies that are in the area, I really like that, because it could be many community that then amplify the message to a larger audience. So I think that's a good thing.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great observation. I appreciate you saying that, because we do want to augment New York, and it has a lot of initiatives at the city and the state level around cyber, and is at the forefront. So that's a great observation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and the speakers and topics, I went through it with a fine-tooth comb and put a few categories of things that we hope to talk about leading up to the event, to kind of share with folks what they can expect in terms of speakers and topics. So we're hoping to chat with a few people around policy. So who's setting it, and how do we bring that into the business? Secure innovation. You spoke to a lot of startups and a lot of smaller organizations, medium-sized organizations doing cool things to build products and programs that take us to the next level. Clearly, secure ops and AppSec core to every security program at this point. And the final one that I'm hoping to bring together is around society and sustainability. Because if we do this just for tomorrow, we might miss the mark for next week or next decade, right? Next generation even, perhaps. So I'm excited to have those conversations and hopefully maybe a closing chat with the team, you and others from the organization that pulled this together, to kind of get a recap of what the conversations were like, which, by the way, September 5th, 2024, Metropolitan Pavilion in Chelsea. It looks like it's going from 9 in the morning to 7:30 if you choose to do the Happy Cyber Hour, or Happy Cyber. There we go. That's what it's called.
Absolutely.
And if you're fortunate enough to get an invite to the Thursday events on the 4th, there's the Identity Think Tank and the CyberTech opening reception. So I don't know how folks get those, but they can reach out to you, Steve, and if they're qualified, I guess they can participate in those events as well. It sounds like a great opportunity to connect with folks with shared interests in this space from all over the world and all walks of life, defining and building and employing technology and people to help us secure our society. So.
Thank you, Sean. I can't really add much to that. That's an excellent one. Thank you.
I know. I couldn't have said that better myself.
me neither. Don't ask me to do it again.
do it again. Do it again now.
Do it again.
Well, this was fun. I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's a new venture for us as well to cover this event. So best of luck for this. We're looking forward to many more conversation as we lead to this, which is not that far from now, but
No.
you know, it's enough to nail a few interesting conversations. So we're looking forward to that. We invite everybody to stay tuned on location with Sean Martin and Marco Ciappelli, which is me. And we'll put links on this podcast, or if you're watching the video on YouTube, to get to the website, learn more about CyberTech NYC, and that's it. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Hope to see you or some of your colleagues there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.